Good evening, this is the Oscar expert here with Brother Rowe, and it's time to review Marcel the Shell with Shoes On.
This is the kids' version to Marcel with the Shell with the Shoes Off, which is only for adults.
This is directed by Fleischer-Camp, and it stars Jenny Slate as Marcel the Shell doing the voice. The same two who did the little YouTube shorts back in the day that went viral. You may or may not know those.
I'm very biased going into this movie because I have not really seen the shorts, which makes me not a candidate for the movie, so whatever I say about the movie, because I haven't seen the shorts, it doesn't matter. It's not a valid criticism. This is like a very simple, little, cute movie. Our audience seemed really charmed by it, at least in the beginning of the film, and I think probably throughout. The cuteness alone will be enough to hold the entire movie together for some people. I don't know if I was one of those people. Like, I'm not sure how cute and funny you have to find it in order to fall completely in love with it. But I was like, yeah, it's cute. It's cute. It's nice. I don't think it like went beyond that for me. And then I ended up overall feeling like fine about the movie. Like it didn't knock my socks off. But I know this is knocking some people's socks off. So it's like, I wonder, is the cuteness carrying them all the way through? Does that enter their heart and then they're just open to have like this amazing experience? Because honestly, I think the story here was pretty thin, maybe intentionally so, but it felt like everything that happened in the film was like, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I knew that was gonna happen. That's what's supposed to happen in this movie. And then it's not really doing anything else. However, like, I'm not saying it's bad because it's really sweet and it has a great message.
Yeah, you could call me Cole who walked out of this movie with his socks on.
Wow.
My socks were also not blown off. But I agree. Like, the movie's got enough charm and enough cuteness. I love Marcel. He's little. He's very...
You love him. Love should be reserved only for family.
I like Marcel. And the movie overall is very novel. It doesn't feel like anything I've seen really with the mockumentary style and the little stop motion characters. It really makes this house that it takes place in feel really huge and wondrous and big, and like the windowsill is its own little area. It's got like that sense of adventure. It's very creative.
It definitely seems like it wasn't made for a lot of money. Like, it feels like a passion project.
And although this is PG and you think maybe it's a kid's movie, it comes across as more of like a hangout movie. Feels to me like it was more for adults because of how dry the humor could be and how it's not very plot heavy or conflict focused.
Yeah, I think a kid's movie, Marcel and the guy would have gone on a road trip and they would have had more like mishaps and adventures and have a bunch of slapstick along the way, but it's really not like that. It's all very contained within a house, and I was kind of surprised by how like little physical adventure there was in the film. A lot of it's just dealing with Marcel and his relationship with his grandma. I don't think all kids would love it, but I still think they would like it and enjoy it because the shell is enough. They're like, shell.
I also like that it has its own sense of humor. Even if like not all the funny bits landed like super hard for me, it was pretty funny. Fairly often enough.
Yeah, it had some really good jokes in it, and I like the sense of humor.
The delivery with the dialogue and the voice acting, I think, is a little different from what you normally get too. And with the mockumentary style that this movie's in, you get more like ums and like stutters and stuff like that, which I think adds to the charm. I mean, the movie definitely goes far beyond what it could have been with its small little origins. And I think it digs deeper than most people were expecting. It gets into like Marcel's greatest fears in life. It even starts to dig a little bit at Dean, the man behind the camera, also, the writer, director of the movie, is a character himself in here. It almost turns inward. We almost like kind of turn the camera around and study this character, but I don't think the movie quite does that as much as I maybe wanted it to. I don't know if this is because Dean is not really an actor and maybe he didn't want to quite go there. He did feel like a significant part of the story, but I think that it could have gone further with that relationship. The relationship between Marcel and his grandmother was much stronger.
Yeah, I think the film just didn't go as big as I would have wanted it to. Even Marcel and his motivation, I felt like the motivation set in about a third of the way through the movie, but it didn't seem like it was Marcel, that he had this sort of like deep or set fear. And I feel like he wasn't really challenged on the fear that much. I think there's one moment that does show him strongly like confronting it, but a lot of the times he's kind of allowed to be passive because the option that we know he should take is like pretty easy to do. It didn't feel like there was that much standing in his way. So from a writing perspective, like, aside from the dialogue, I felt like the story was a bit weak. And I also felt like it didn't build momentum until the end, where I couldn't exactly tell where I was in the story. There's one part where it seems like Marcel is going to go out onto this big adventure, and then it doesn't happen. And you kind of reroute. You're like, oh, we're settling back into like being at home again. And then once a sort of opportunity presents itself, it feels like the film becomes really quick from there, and it just kind of moves at a predictable pace towards the end without that much drama. What you're supposed to take away from the film is stated pretty clearly. When you're supposed to feel sad is pretty obvious. It didn't really catch me off guard enough like a movie might have to in order for me to feel really emotional or really feel like I'm learning something at a deep level. Because yeah, you can tell me something, and if I'm not emotionally pulled in or I'm not on a real journey with a character, I'm just gonna go, yeah, that's a thing I've heard before. It's like a platitude or something. And I just wasn't completely pulled into the story for it to like teach me this lesson on a deep level. Although I do like the lesson it is trying to teach, and I agree with it. And I think it's a very sweet movie for aiming to do that. And it does aim to give the audience something of substance to take away.
It feels like the lesson of the movie is more like given to Marcel, and it's like, this is what you will learn. Even though I know what he learned, I didn't experience like him learning it. And one of the moments that I assume was getting people crying, because I've heard a lot of people saying, you know, this is bring your tissues to this movie and everything. I felt that that moment was so clearly built up to that it just didn't surprise me at all, kind of like you're saying. It was just very obvious that the movie was setting up what that moment was going to be and what was going to be the takeaway from it, and so it was just like, yeah, there's the thing that I knew was going to happen.
Yep. Maybe Marcel is just such an innocent and pure character that the writers didn't really feel like there was that much to give him, and so they kept his journey kind of simple. He does learn this lesson. He's not challenged or pushed that hard out of his comfort zone, but it's just enough. But mostly it's just the sweetness that you take away. But I also feel like they teased a couple directions they could have taken this. There were a couple times when they questioned whether Marcel was being authentic or like performing for the camera, and then that didn't really go anywhere. And then there's like the arc they hint at for the man behind the camera, which he does sort of get an arc that they tell you in the epilogue basically, but that doesn't come up that much. Yeah, it's just sort of like an unchallenging film for him. I don't know how much challenge I want to ask for this character to go through, because he is like innocent and pure and he should be kept that way. It's not like I want him to get a brick in the face of adolescence and then have an identity crisis. That wouldn't really feel real to him either, but
I mean, I think he kind of did. He had like a past trauma experience that he's trying to work with.
Definitely a shout out to the score, which I thought was really great. It blends in so well that you might not even notice it, but when I did pay attention to it, it was something that I thought, yeah, I would listen to this on its own. It was really fitting for the film. The sound work's also interesting here because they really dedicate the sound to feeling like a home video, where the person behind the camera has that like boomy quality to their voice, and then Marcel's voice almost sounds like it's too close to your ear. But I guess they did a good job because it feels like it should be that way.
It's also interesting how they made it. I couldn't really tell how they did the stop motion with the camera style, which is very shaky and like focus pulley. I didn't understand how that worked, so
yeah,
good job to the movie for that. There's been like chatter about if this can get nominated for animated feature or not.
It feels really unusual to call it an animated feature, especially when The Lion King is not called an animated feature, and then you have this. It's like stop motion animation inside of a live action movie.
Really charming, enjoyable movie. Can't say that I'm quite up to the hype on this one. It does have like a 4.2 on LETTERBOXD right now, very high critic reviews, so don't let us, I guess, be the only people who you hear an opinion from, even though I do recommend the movie. I give it a 7 out of 10.
It was a good enough time, and I do think some people will like it, but it doesn't feel like something that I needed to see. I would give it a 6 out of 10.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing.
Do you have your shoes on?